Welcome to Transformation 2.0, the podcast for change leaders. My name is 𝗞𝗲𝘆 and in each episode we bring you real conversations with executives, innovators, and experts who are shaping the future of business. Whether you are leading a team, scaling a company, or navigating the challenges of transformation, this podcast will provide you with insights, strategies, and inspiration to drive meaningful change. Join us as we explore what it takes to lead, adapt, and thrive in an ever-evolving world. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Transformation 2.0. I have with me today Dane Eldridge and Andy Graham, who are the co-founders of StackUp. I'm pleased to welcome them to the Transformation 2.0. Andy, Dane, welcome to the show.
Thanks,
It's good to be here.
Great to be here.
Dane, Andy, and thanks again for joining today. I'm not gonna try to introduce yourselves. Obviously, if you could give maybe a short, brief overview of your personal background, professional background, that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely. So I started out once upon a time as a developer, so computer science background, and founded a software development agency that I grew over about sort of 20 years. So spent a lot of time with tech leaders and CTOs, ranging from sort of small startups through to big corporates, listed companies and the like. And so sort of saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of tech leadership in that time. And then, obviously came across Andy. Andy was one of my clients, and we've known each other for how long now?
About 15 years, I think.
15 years, yeah, there you go.
And ne'er a bad word said amongst us so far. My name's Andy Graham. So I've been in tech for about 30 years. I've been a CIO and CTO for around 20 years. Most of my career in financial services and automotive. 15 years with a business called SG Fleet, who are the largest fleet leasing provider in Australia. And a big part of my role there was M&A, due diligence, and also being audited and being assessed on a regular basis. The joys of being working in a listed business in corporate. So over that period of time, I became very good at assessing other technology functions because I was being assessed, and there was no reliable standards for what good looked like. There's lots of standards for compliance, ISO 27001, there's NIST, and there's SOC 2, and so on and so forth. But there's nothing that actually measures technology health or operational excellence. So I developed my own framework, which ultimately was the genesis for what is now StackUp, which we're obviously here to talk a little about today.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Andy. Thanks, Dane. And obviously, for our listeners' benefit, we're going to be talking about benchmarking to accelerate strategy and to improve execution. And in an era where technology drives business competitiveness, knowing how your organization stacks up is more critical than ever. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking to Dane and Andy, who are the co-founders of StackUp, about importance of objective benchmarking and how it kickstarts a more focused strategic conversation to close the gap between strategy and execution. And obviously de-risk decision making at scale for organizations. So to kick things off, I'll start with the question of the problem of assumption-based tech leadership. What were some of the recurring challenges that you observed in tech leadership that inspired StackUp? What do you think so many leaders struggle to gain clarity on where their organization's technology function really is?
Yeah. I think one of the key things that we've observed is just, as Andy said earlier, there's no objective measure. There's sort of compliance frameworks out there, but how do you know that your tech function is actually good? Decision making in a vacuum, based on opinion and based on the journey that a particular tech leader might be on. So you might have a tech leader who's great at software development, but has no clue about infrastructure or security or data privacy or vendor management. So I think, certainly without that objective measure, there's a lot of guesswork, there's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of storytelling, because there's not a clear picture of what the tech function looks like. And that leads to just poorer decisions, not through any bad intent, but just those unknown unknowns can be really dangerous.
And the challenge that I faced, as I alluded to earlier, compliance frameworks. The problem with compliance frameworks is they don't make you good, they just make you compliant. And anyone with enough time, money, and patience can become compliant. But a lot of tech leaders mistake that to be, well, because we've got ISO 27001, which I'm a strong advocate for, by the way. I've led 2 ISO 27001 implementations. It has its place, absolutely. But a lot of tech leaders and businesses assume because they have that, they're bulletproof. And the reality is they're not. It doesn't make them good. It just makes them compliant. So a big inspiration for StackUp is, well, how do you become good? So as well as getting your certification, which is important, and your compliance frameworks, what are the healthy cadences and operating rhythms that you need as a tech function for operational excellence? So that's a really key focus for us.
No, thank you for that. And I think, you hit the nail on the head, talking about compliance frameworks and what it gives you. It makes organizations compliant to status quo or stasis, if I can use the term. So if you want to stay in the same place, the compliance frameworks help you with that. But if you are an organization that's moving fast, that's trying to create new value, drive innovation, drive transformation, that doesn't help you, right?
Yeah. And the compliance frameworks, as I say, they're good, but they just, as I say, if you're moving fast, compliance isn't necessarily going to help you to achieve that. But they do have their place. They challenge you to be better with your, frameworks and processes and documentation and so on and so forth. But as you say, if you're moving pretty fast and pretty quickly in an innovative space, it doesn't help.
Absolutely.
Because it's a point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, now more than ever, it's important because the technology is moving so fast, the industries are moving so fast.
Yeah.
So I think, what you guys have created with StackUp interested me mostly because of that. It's because, you guys not only help with that compliance aspect, but you also look at other things like the strategy, the innovation, and program delivery, cyber security, all these other aspects.
Well, great example at the moment with AI. ISO 27001 doesn't help you with the challenges and the risks with AI, right? So you can have ISO 27001, but unless you've got the right mindset, behavior, cultures, and attitude, that's not going to help you with shadow AI, as it's now called, like a shadow IT, shadow AI. Compliance doesn't help you with that. But if you've got baked into your operating rhythm good practices, good culture, good behaviors, it's naturally going to be questioned and understand how that's going to impact us, how that's going to be managed from a change management perspective, just because that's how everyone thinks and operates. It's in the DNA. It's not just because you ticked a box on a compliance framework. And that's the difference between the two.
Spot on. I guess just moving on to the next topic that I want to cover, which is more around, I guess, your experience of creating StackUp, from frustration to founding. How did your experience in coaching leaders shape the idea for the StackUp? What were some of the turning points that led to you to try and turn this into a platform? What was the beginning? How did it all start? Share a bit more details with us.
Yeah, I guess there are a couple of things that kind of came together when Andy and I got to talking. So I guess I'd seen a bunch of scenarios where there'd be a CTO who was achieving incredible things on a shoestring budget, but getting no credit for it, because again, their CEO had no idea that they were doing a great job. There was no independent benchmarking for that. And on the flip side, some other CTOs that are just spending left, right, and center, not achieving very much, and thinking that was actually good performance. So there's a bit of frustration with that, I guess, that the right decisions weren't being made and the right people weren't getting rewarded. And so sort of the concept of having an independent set of metrics that you can kind of measure against to show performance was part of it. I think one of the other frustrations was just seeing businesses, and Andy and I have both seen this, that can spend millions of dollars over several years and have nothing to show for it. And it's often because they haven't got those right structures and processes in place that enable them to actually deliver and perform effectively. And again, not through bad intent, usually just through a knowledge gap. So yeah, I think that was at least part of the inspiration. And Andy, maybe you can speak to.
Yeah, I mean, mine, as I mentioned at the very start, was just solving a problem. Necessity is the mother of invention. I was doing lots of assessments without any framework to work from. I was a CIO myself, so I'm like, well, what do I want? What do I look for? How do I run the team on a day-to-day basis? That's the framework that I want to measure people against. Again, not to say I'm perfect, but at least it's a framework, which we've actually validated now with the numerous CIOs and CTOs, pretty senior ones with lots of experience globally. So we know now that the framework that we've implemented, is validated and tested independently by lots of others. But that's effectively, the starting point for it. What I would say, the other frustration for me is a lot of the training that you go through for, coaching and training programs for senior leaders, they don't really talk about tech. It's a lot about business and economics, and which is fine. That's really important, but it doesn't translate tech into business outcomes. So one of the key things that we do with the assessment is not only do you get an assessment of current state, it tells you the gaps. The gaps can then be a learning experience and a real-time, tangible coaching experience, because one, you're going to derive value from that as a tech leader, because you're going to learn how to improve and elevate those areas, but the business is tangibly getting better as a result of that as well. So it's kind of training with a tangible outcome, as opposed to theoretical training that you do one day, you kind of forget about it, and then in a year's time there may be something that you can learn from that. Whereas this is using that actual assessment to train, learn, coach, and then help the business as well. So it's kind of a win-win. Everyone wins out of it. And then if you come from a software development background and you don't know anything about infrastructure, or minimal, it's that age-old battle between software and infrastructure, software and hardware. At least it was when in the 90s, and it's getting less and less now with the hyperscalers of AWS, but it was always a big problem. And the software didn't want to understand the hardware side, and vice versa. This kind of just bridges that gap in its entirety, because for them to raise the level and raise the score, they have no choice but to understand it and elevate it.
Yeah, they need to bring the two together, right?
That's it, 100%.
And I think those are two things that needs to come together. And obviously on the other side, what we all see is the gap between business and tech, right?
That's it.
And that's I guess the age-old battle that's still raging across all types of businesses.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so many CEOs and founders are kind of having those discussions with the CTO, or asking questions, but then getting stories, because there's just no shared language, shared set of metrics about the things that matter. And this just simplifies that into a really simple set of metrics that you can use as a shared language to talk about. So
cool. I love that. And I guess maybe just moving on to the next question, which is more looking at, why benchmarking is the missing link. How does StackUp provide independent, objective insights in a way that is different from traditional consulting or discovery workshops? What is the differentiation there for you guys in terms of what you created with the framework and the platform? And then obviously what makes benchmarking such a powerful accelerant for strategy from your perspective? Obviously, I've got a few things to add here from my perspective with what we created at Antosa as well, in terms of our strategy accelerators. But I think, I want to maybe start with the conversation based on your perspective.
I might start with that one. The single most important differentiator: we don't sell services. That in itself is a unique proposition, that we are a platform only. There's no services. So when we go into an engagement and someone does the assessment, it's never on the basis that we're going to then try and sell them something at the end of it. It's purely a assessment. Then once they've done that, it's up to the individual business to decide how to progress and proceed. And that in itself is a significant differentiator, just because most people are trying to sell services. They do, like, there's a myriad of cybersecurity assessments out there that you can do for free, but it's always on the back of, and then we will come in and sell you services. So that in itself is a huge differentiator.
Cool.
I think the way I describe it is like, again, just in a direct comparison with traditional sort of consulting assessments, it's faster, more comprehensive, more consistent, more independent, as Andy mentioned, and a fraction of the cost. So faster, it's kind of hours instead of weeks. Comprehensive, because it's every aspect of technology, not just the bit that consultant happens to be strong at. More independent, as Andy mentioned. More consistent, because it's just literally the same format every time. So if you're doing multiple assessments, you can kind of form a bit of that pattern recognition and get really good at interpreting it. And fraction of the cost. Obviously, it's free to try, couple of K for an annual license instead of sort of 30K plus for an elite CTO to come in and do that type of engagement. So
cool. I love that. And I guess maybe in terms of what insights that come out of that assessment, I guess from your experience, how does that guide the I guess the strategy and the direction that the organization has to move towards, to whether it's to drive a continuous improvement program, or to look for a comprehensive transformation, or to actually look for where do they need to drive significant amount of change in the organization to try and uplift their capabilities across the different metrics.
Do you want to have a crack at that one, Andy?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, we're not trying to replace or displace consultants. That's not what the intention is here. So the intention is that we're doing that discovery. So the discovery that normally takes 3 to 4 weeks, no one likes it. There's a lot of friction. Everyone gets a bit defensive. It's just kind of taking that and accelerating that entire process, so that when you do decide what to do next, whether that be through an external consultant or internal, you're using the brain power and the value to actually solve tangible problems, as opposed to spending 3 or 4 weeks just doing this discovery and everyone sits in meetings. And again, I've done it plenty of times where no one really wants to be there, and it's cookie cutter, right? They're just asking the same thing again and again and again, and each time. So it takes that, it compresses the time frame, and then it allows the smart people to come in and say, okay, this is where we can help and this is how we can help. Now, whilst we don't necessarily provide that service, we do have a partner program, which obviously you guys are a part of, where we can introduce partners in for customers to be able to progress the strategy and then decide where and how they want to go next. But what we have seen is, thus far, I'd say north of 90% of customers who have completed the assessment have changed the technology strategy. Even if it's small things, they've changed it. There's not one. I sat in a meeting with a customer recently, and they literally made a change during the meeting to resolve one of the issues that was flagged in the report. And that's the speed, right, that they're able to operate at. So that's the big difference. It's again back to what Dane was saying, the speed and the efficiency, because you can really just drill down on the things that matter without going through weeks and weeks of discovery and then getting an Excel spreadsheet that no one quite understands, and it's in technical speak, and that's a big difference.
I love that, and I think that's actually the reason why we actually partnered with you guys, because for me, based on my consulting experience, I've seen where we've actually gone on the ground and done weeks of discovery or weeks of assessment before we can actually come and start a conversation in terms of, here's an area that we want to try and explore. And I think, like, to me, the frustration in building a lot of the services with 𝗀𝗲𝘆 has been the model that we have in terms of our strategy accelerators is always been actually don't start from ground zero in terms of what you need to look at. Always bring a blueprint of what do you want to start with, and then use the blueprint to actually look at, here, if this is the blueprint of things that you want to create in the future, what's the delta from that to what you have currently? For me, the value in talking to you guys was actually, you guys provided a lot of data in your StackUp assessment that could actually help to bridge that gap very quickly. So that's why we decided to partner with you guys. Right? So to me, I think, like, that's the bit that I'm really excited about with your platform.
And some consultants want the money. Right, there are some that will say, well, we don't want to use StackUp because we want the 3 weeks of. That's fine, that's their choice. But for those that go, well, hang on, let's be a little bit more progressive and do the right thing by the customer. That's the important one, right? It's the right thing for the customer is reduce the time, reduce the cost. That's what you want to get out of this. Whereas there's some consultants that we spoke to, they listen to what we're doing and go, oh, that's 3 weeks worth of income that's at risk there. So I don't think I'll take that. But you like to think that over time, if someone's got that mindset, then it's never going to work for either them or the customer over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you couldn't have said it better. And for us, and also it's been the value prop for us. I mean, I don't want to obviously talk about our value prop, but for me, it's always been about how do we actually create that customer value, right? And I think having the platform that we partnered with you guys, it gives us the bias to action straight away rather than spending weeks on discovery, right? And obviously the next area that I want to deep dive into is more just looking at the data-driven strategy. Obviously, this is something that we are very passionate about with 𝗀𝗲𝘆. In most of the strategy accelerators that we create, we create, how do we use data to try and drive action? How do we make sure that there's continuous assessments in terms of how things are progressing, how things are evolving in terms of the direction that you want to head to, right? And so in terms of what you created with StackUp, maybe can you share some examples of what StackUp has uncovered for organizations, either in validating known risks or highlighting some hidden areas of risk, or maybe in terms of how do organizations typically act on the insights that come out of the strategy, out of the assessment that StackUp does?
Yeah, so we do share some of these metrics on LinkedIn. So if those out there listening out, following us on LinkedIn, then follow us on LinkedIn and you get to see some of the metrics which we do publish to show some of the trends that we're seeing. Examples like one of the most common examples that we see is companies that have DR policies or BCP or DR policies or BCP plans, but they never test them. So if you're not testing them, there's may as well not have the plan in the first place. And everyone just assumes that this is a huge exercise that they've got to undertake, and it's a real, I've got to shut down the building or practice a full BCP. And what I say to them is, it takes an hour. You sit in a room and you just do a tabletop test. That's it. You're sitting there, you come up with 10 scenarios before you go in. You don't tell anyone what the scenarios are. You go in the room and you say, right, we're going to work through 10 scenarios and we're all going to agree, what would we do in that situation? Like key person risk. John leaves tomorrow. We know he's got lots of IP. What do we do? And they all collectively agree and discuss. And then that feeds back into the DR or the BCP. But that's an hour. But everyone just has this assumption that, this is going to take time. It's really expensive. It's like, it really isn't. And some of the basic things that we identify, like, automatic email forwarding that people have switched on by default. So by default, Google and Microsoft have the ability for users to automatically forward all emails as they come in. Big security no, don't do it. Takes about 30 seconds to fix it. So again, what we highlight and what we uncover is a lot of what we talk about. It doesn't take a lot of time, doesn't take a lot of money. Just take the right attitude and behaviors. And it comes back to what I said earlier on. It's not about compliance. It's about having the right behaviors and attitudes. And writing policy documents. They don't have to be war and peace. It's really about focusing on business outcomes and commercial outcomes. Tangible, practical value. That's the key to everything that we try to highlight. So that's what that's really for me, the key trends are people think it takes longer and costs more than it actually does if you just take a different, or look at it through a different lens and take a different approach, which is a lot more pragmatic and just really focus on the value that you're providing.
I think another trend that we're probably seeing as well is just clients that might come and engage StackUp for a particular reason because they just have a doubt about a particular area of technology, and it'll identify whether that's correct or not. But it's often the unknown, that blind spot that they hadn't even considered. And that's really where they get a lot of value, because that just wasn't even on their radar. Like Andy said, a lot of the time it's not massive cost or effort to fix, but massive implication if you don't fix it and something happens. So kind of just helping them proactively avoid some of those tech nightmares that happen around outages, cyber incidents, just lost innovation. I think that's a really hidden cost. Doesn't show up directly on a P&L line item, but slow innovation, a project that should have taken you 3 months that took you 9,
And it would be remiss of me not to talk about the communication challenges that technology leaders generally have.
And really?
So what we do find is, again, quite consistently, is that the tech leaders, they're really good at what they do, but they just can't communicate that to the non-technical board or the executives. So they've got it under control. They know, but they don't have the time or sometimes the inclination to put a PowerPoint together or to put a report together or to put it all in an email in plain English that a non-tech person. So the non-tech guy's got this guy's is doing his own thing, hasn't got things under control. He always talks to us in jargon. We don't know what's going on. What StackUp does, and we've seen this on many occasions now, it gives them a sense of alignment. Actually, we're doing okay. We just didn't know it. And we've got some developments coming over the next few months that further reinforce and impact that communication gap that exists in. And again, I would hazard to say the majority of tech people out there and non-tech people would listen to this and say, yeah, I get that. It is a challenge. It's not because anyone's doing anything wrong. It's just simply that.
Just two different worlds have two different sets of languages, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Not non-tech execs, bloody tech people that can't communicate. Tech execs, bloody non-tech execs, they don't understand.
Understand their business.
And they've both got good intent.
Yeah.
It's a communication chasm.
Yeah,
Not
no,
just a
that's
gap.
that's exactly a nice way to put it, and I've lived through that experience many a times, so I can definitely relate to that. And then maybe I guess looking a little bit at about how do organizations typically act when they get these outcomes. Yes, I mean being able to talk to the board and the executives about how the organization's tech function is performing is really good. But in terms of any shortcomings, obviously that they usually have certain ways they might behave in terms of addressing them. What are some of the experiences you've had in terms of navigating that?
Yeah, it's been quite varied actually. So we've had those that thought because we provide a score, the first thing you get is a score out of 100. It can go negative up to about -80, but you can go up to a maximum of 100. And we had one customer recently who they got a score of, I think it was about 60, 61 or something, and they thought it was terrible. But when I explained to them that in the industry that they're in and what they do, this was NFP, by the way, not for profit, which we provide assessments for free. And when I explained to them that score is actually really good for a not-for-profit, that everyone was happy. Everyone's kind of high-fiving each other, going, "That's really good," because we just assumed that we weren't doing a great job. And I'm like, "No, you're doing a really good job relative to your peers." So benchmarking, again, back to what we try to do here is benchmarking. It's important for people to understand that they don't operate in a vacuum. There's other companies out there that we can compare against in an anonymous and aggregate way, of course. But yeah, so that's one key thing that we've seen. And then the other, a good example is just that, again, as we alluded to earlier, is just that lack of alignment. So the tech lead has been saying, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to do this.
But they don't really explain.
Not explain. Explain it maybe technically, right? They'll say, we need to do this because we need to improve this server and this support. And it's like, okay, so
correctly, but not usefully is how I'd put it. Yeah.
So that's another, just so that alignment, it has been a really important thing that we've seen that everybody benefits from. No one loses out of that. The tech leader benefits on, hallelujah. Finally, I'm getting the budget and the resourcing that I needed to do this thing that I've been telling them that I wanted to do. And the CEO goes, that's what you meant. Now I get it. Yeah, of course you can do that. So there. But it's been very varied in terms of the different paths that people have taken. I mean, we've had one or two customers who've just put their head in the sand and said, nah. But again, that's their choice. That's the platform is there to shine a light and let them look in the mirror
and at least now it's a conscious choice, right? That's the thing. If they make that choice, excellent, but they've done it eyes wide open rather than just by hope, assumption, winging it.
I get it, and I think that sets us up nicely for the next question, which is more bridging the gap between insight to execution. Obviously, the bit in the middle is the insight, the action plan, and the execution. And obviously, we are pretty big on the action plan, which is our strategy accelerators. And obviously, the main reason why we do that is so that we can bridge the gap between strategy and execution. But I'm excited to hear about how does StackUp help teams move from strategy into action by having a clear trail of data in terms of why are we doing this, how does this support the strategy that we created, and then obviously galvanize the team around driving that outcome, because they have a dire need to improve that or decide to change that because it has significant business risk. And then obviously, what role does partners like 𝗞𝗲𝘆 play in this journey in terms of, getting the results of benchmarks and then to looking at the real world transformation, which we are quite passionate about. Maybe we can address the first one first and then come back to the second one.
Yeah, so I think, as we said earlier, tech is changing so fast and there are so many deep areas that you can get into. You need specialist partners that can deep dive into those areas. We are fiercely independent, so we need to not be a service provider, but we often get asked, right? Because naturally gaps get identified, people want to uplift. When they don't have the capacity or the capability internally, they'll often ask us and sort of say, hey, who can we trust that's in this space that is a specialist? And that's kind of where that network of trusted partners comes into play. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the whole question, but hopefully
I think that's the second part of the question.
Yep.
Maybe we'll let Andy address the first part of it in terms of moving from insights to strategy to execution.
Yeah, again, without getting too repetitive, what someone called us recently the common sense assessment, and by that what they meant was it's written and done in such plain English and such common sense that everybody can get aligned very quickly to agree what to do next. that's the key difference. It's not, it's not jargon. It's not trying to bamboozle them with technology and saying you've got to do this and this server and this architecture. It's common sense. And we've got videos that we recorded for every single factor in the report that explain in business terms what it means if you don't address that. For example, if you do not encrypt all of your devices, this is what can happen. If you don't have MFA, this is what can happen. But it's structured in a way that says this is the business impact. This is not about techies. This is not about trusting that someone's got a screwdriver and doing the right thing down in the tech department. This is about tangible business outcomes, which you as directors are responsible for, with fines and potentially criminal responsibilities. And that's the again, moving it into strategy. That's what we're trying to bridge the gap on, is just really that understanding that no, there is a commercial business impact here. It's just it's never been explained to you in a way that you understand. And as soon as you start talking dollars and cents with a board,
or direct impact to customer,
that's it. Everyone's like, all right,
Yes.
okay, now we get it. It's that just that light bulb moment. It's like,
That's
okay, now we get it. Now
It's
we
not just,
understand.
there's a report with a bunch of tech stuff that can be improved on. So what? Well, this is the so what bit.
It's about, which customer's data is getting exposed because you didn't do this, or which customer is missing their orders because this happens, or
and we now produce, as part of the assessment, we produce 3 additional artifacts. So you get a technology strategy, a document that you can feed into the board pack or start working towards for the roadmap for the future. We provide a short 5-minute video that goes through the report. This is all AI driven as well. There's a short 5-minute video that explains, again, in plain English, a page turn of the report, what it means and what the impact. But the most powerful artifact that we produce is a podcast. It's between 20 to 30 minutes, depending on the report. And what that does is it's two people. Again, it's all driven by AI. 2 people that sit and talk through the report in layman's terms. It's very, very non-technical, but I have to say, and this is not, we didn't develop this technology, of course. This is Google, right? The technology is magnificent. The way that they do it and the insights that they provide for non-technical business leaders is far surpasses anything that I could sit on a call and do.
Absolutely.
And we can do it at scale for every single report that we produce.
And it's that storytelling that comes between, in a conversation between 2 people. I think this is the one that I mistook to be the StackUp podcast when you actually shared one of these.
And it means that people can consume and digest that at their own leisure. So if you're driving to work or you're going for a walk at lunchtime, however you want to consume, you can listen to it, and it's not the tech person trying to adapt themselves to suit you. It's 2 people speaking in a language that you really understand about your business with your context, telling you this is what happens if you don't do these things. So we found that's been particularly popular as an artifact that we now produce.
And I think that's a really nice segue into the last question that I want to cover today, which is, obviously the way leaders consume information is changing. It's no longer the 120 slide deck that you give to people to say this is what you want to do. It's about how do you create a video, how do you create a podcast between 2 people that explain to you what's happening in your business, right? And I think that's the last question that I want to talk about, the future of leadership. More importantly, the tech leadership, right? And that's the space that you guys are quite closely engaging with. And obviously from I guess there's 2 lenses that we need to look at it here, which is more what advice do you give to tech leaders in terms of trying to future-proof their technology organization? And then obviously the other lens of that is what do business leaders need to think of in terms of expectations for their tech leaders, right? And that's the expectations and the capability that tech leaders need to develop. And obviously lastly, it's about how should they think about continuous benchmarking as a way of not just improving performance but sustaining performance, making sure that you're not sliding back into old habits. Maybe we can address the first one around leadership and then come back to the second one.
I might take the first one and then you can take the second one. So I guess for me, the key, and this hasn't changed in 30 years, by the way, of working in technology. It's about communication. It's being open, transparent, honest, and communicating. I've not always done it well, by the way, not to say I've been perfect, but I've learned over the years that, you also want to tell people the bad news as well as the good news. Because if you try and hide that, a bad problem doesn't get better with time.
Yeah.
So communication's a real key. And things like and pushing back as well is a really important one for me. So if you've got an executive team that's saying we need to implement AI, it's like, okay, great. Let's figure out some objectives, some success criteria. What are we trying to achieve? And if what we're trying to achieve is just to test it and play around with it, that's great. But at least everyone understands that at the end of that, there's no outcome, there's no success, there's no impact on the business.
It's just an understanding and learning.
Yeah, which is a perfectly reasonable initiative to do. But having that expectation and alignment up front. So for me, it all comes down to communication, transparency, and making sure that everyone's aligned with what you're doing and why you're doing it. And speaking to non-tech execs about things like AI, saying, look, it's just another digital transformation. It's just a different type of technology, but the principles are the same.
Yeah.
We're going to apply the same level of governance and risk and compliance. And even if it's a light touch, but you're still going to apply that same level of change management. Just because it's AI doesn't make it any different. So that for me is a key for any tech leader moving forward. That communication is critical, and storytelling, communication. That they're the tech leaders that I see as being the most successful are those that can communicate. The technology experience, it goes out the window when you get to a certain point. You use it maybe 10% of the time, if that. It's really all about communication, alignment, and setting expectations with your own team as well, with your own team and the stakeholders.
And also understanding what level of tech you need to cover in each team, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think two things I'd just add to that, and agree with everything that Andy said there. I think just that back to first principles of just what gets measured gets improved. And so StackUp obviously is a part of that, but it goes for every part of technology, right? If you're not measuring it, it's probably not the thing that's going to get the most traction. And secondly, just with so much change going on, I think experimentation is really important, and doing that in a safe way, but making sure the ones that are transforming rapidly are the ones that are actually actively engaging
I've seen an example recently of a business that was experimenting with AI, but the leadership assumed that was going to lead to something. So there's then everyone got frustrated because they were spending money and they diverted resources and budget onto this thing just to test it and try it with an expectation that there was an outcome. And just that there's just this
miscommunication.
Miscommunication. That's all it was. It was just communication. Everyone was trying to do thought they were doing the right thing. But this lack of communication, at the end of it, everyone's frustrated. It's like, the bloody tech people are wasting money and they're chasing a new shiny object. And it's like, no, they were doing exactly what they thought they should do. And again, that just comes down to that communication and alignment.
And I absolutely get it. And I think, when we created our innovation strategy accelerator, this was actually the problem we were trying to solve, because a lot of the innovation functions or centers of innovation were becoming money pits, because they were becoming the sort of attractive, shiny new tools. Everyone wants to gravitate towards and do something. And in the end, you end up spending so much, you don't really understand how it drives value to the organization. So that's why we created the innovation strategy accelerator. And then when we created the AI strategy accelerator, we pretty much added the same thing and said, AI has a new tech that we need to address something differently. And I think maybe just covering the last question around the continuous benchmarking and performance improvement, and how does I guess StackUp as a platform support that for clients in terms of at the starting point as well as ongoing. Do you want to maybe shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think compared to, again, a sort of traditional consulting engagement where you might only be able to do that once every 12 months because it takes the team off doing what they're meant to be doing. It costs a lot, it takes time. It's another distraction that we just don't need right now. Because this literally takes half an hour each sort of assessment, you can do it as frequently as you like. We think quarterly is about a healthy cadence because it's going to track the areas of improvement, so where things have gotten better, but also where things have decayed. Often there might be some personnel changes or a tech leadership change or a change in strategy, and suddenly things are a bit different and no one actually realized. So because it's so fast and so cost effective, we think it just gives you that continuous benchmarking as opposed to a one-off point in time every few years.
Cool. It's really great to see that, it's been built into the model that you're trying to come up with for the customers. And I'm really excited to actually partner with you guys in terms of this space, because that's an area where we've had a gap traditionally in terms of how we go to market for our service offerings. We haven't really done assessments for tech functions specifically. What we've been doing is more sort of, looking across tech and business in terms of our service offerings, and then looking at that. And I think, when we had the initial conversation, the reason why I felt, this is a great way to actually try and keep that momentum in terms of making sure that the teams are actually not just doing it one off, but then having that continuous lens in terms of just because we improve one doesn't mean it stays there. You need to keep coming back to it, and I really love that fact. Thank you for that. And thank you again for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate the conversation and the insightful information you shared. And obviously, we look forward to working with you guys in the future. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Dane.
Thanks for having us, mate. Much appreciated.
Yeah, likewise. Cheers.
Cheers. That's it for today's episode of Transformation 2.0. I hope you found insights that will help you lead change with confidence. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Your support helps us bring more transformational stories to leaders like you. Stay connected with us on LinkedIn, and if you have a topic or guest you would love to hear on the show, let us know. See you next time.